London properties, English football clubs, foreign buyers are flocking in despite an economy still in the throes of recovering from a banking crash. How attractive is buying in Britain? Here in London, I'm Linda Yueh, and we're talking business. A warm welcome to the program. Despite the doom and gloom you sometimes hear about the British economy, foreign buyers are coming in for at least a couple of assets, housing and football clubs. But in London, prices have risen rapidly and are double the UK average at about £400,000, which have raised concerns. These are some of the most expensive properties in the most desirable parts of London. And the vast majority of the owners are people for whom these are second or third homes. The city is home to many different nationalities, but the influx of these cash-rich buyers is having a huge impact. Although prices in Britain are still below the peak reached in 2007, house prices in London have doubled since 2005, and the latest figures show they're still rising by around 10% from a year ago. According to a recent survey, almost half of prime London properties were sold for or in excess of the asking price, and they sold within 2 weeks of being put up for sale. So, is it the nightlife, the restaurants, or the good schools that's tempting the buyers? And will that lead to a dangerous property bubble? Joining me today to discuss why foreign buyers are coming in and if there's a bubble in the London housing market are Henry Pryor, a housing expert who runs his own blog, The Property Expert, Merryn Somerset Webb, editor of Money Week, and Niccolo Barattieri, CEO of Northacre, a developer of luxury properties in London. Welcome to all of you. Merryn, I'm going to start with you. Is there a bubble in the London property market?
There is, in all normal metrics, a bubble in the London property market, but you have to put it in the context of what's happening globally at the moment with very, very low interest rates, quantitative easing in various different countries, and an awful lot of capital flight out of areas around the world that are seeing difficulties. So is there a bubble in a normal metric looking at incomes to prices and that kind of thing? Yes, there is. But does that necessarily mean that this huge level of price rises will end soon? Probably not.
Henry, do you agree?
I think I do. Certainly the inquiries that I'm getting from people overseas looking to buy in London are viewing London very much as London property as a second currency. They want to see somewhere safe for them as they would see it to put their money. But the mistake that some are making, and it's an easy mistake if you are buying from 6,000 miles away, is to mistake an investment for what is actually a gamble. Speculation in the London housing market is rife. People are forgetting about the idea of a yield for their investment, and they are buying solely for capital value, which I think is extremely dangerous.
Niccolo, is there a bubble? Do you see that in what you're developing?
Well, first of all, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what the future holds for us. I think that, first of all, we are too concentrating and look at it from a perspective of just from a pound perspective. But if you adjust it for currency, the bubble looks very different because if you look at it from some Asian currencies, the market is actually down since 2007. So it's up in pound terms 25%, but it's, for example, down 15% in Singapore dollars. So like everything in statistics, it really depends how you look at it in which perspective. So I don't know what the future holds because I think there are so many different macroeconomic points that can change and make it change dramatically. But I don't necessarily think that there is.
But Merryn, I mean, what about that? I mean, a lot of the buyers are foreign, and they are looking at the value of the pound versus what they would get in other places. So in that sense, if you think the market is bubbly, would this mean that the prices will continue to go up, or is there a risk of collapse?
There's obviously a risk of collapse, but this entirely depends not on what happens just in the UK, but what happens globally. You know, as we were saying, this is a macroeconomic issue. It's about global interest rates, and it's about the flight to safety from countries where capital isn't necessarily safe. So we know, for example, there's huge capital flight from China at the moment. You just have to look at the money coming out of Macau. And we know that inquiries from places such as Argentina, Brazil, etc., have gone up massively in the last few weeks as we saw what might have been the beginning of emerging markets crisis. So house prices in London are not about what Londoners can afford to pay. If it was just about what Londoners could afford to pay, this would be a massive bubble that would collapse any second. It's still a massive bubble. It's just driven by things that are outside the experience of the average domestic Londoner. And so what happens to it next is impossible to tell. It's not based on our experience. It's based on a global macroeconomic experience.
Henry could tell us what's going to happen next, Henry.
Well, if like any market, housing and the property market in London is based on confidence to a great extent, and there is no doubt that estate agents in London, who by and large represent sellers, are extremely confident about the future of house prices in the capital. But if you look at property as an investment, whether you're a UK resident or an overseas buyer who is facing potentially the prospect of capital gains tax they're going to have to pay from spring next year, then London property with yields below, net yields below 2%, is slightly confusing to many people. If you are going to invest in London, then the traditional prime central London property areas remain the place where most people sensibly will look to purchase. But if you are being convinced, as I say, 6,000 miles away, that a £1 million flat in Enfield or Newham is perhaps an investment, I think you're the sort of person that perhaps mistakes Prosecco for champagne, and that is a dangerous road to go down.
Well, Niccolo, what kind of buyers are you seeing hearing this? Is this reflecting the kind of inquiries that you're getting from foreign buyers, or are they really viewing London as a place to invest or to buy, to reside in?
Well, there again, I think you can distort statistics as many people want, right? So I think that in a cosmopolitan city like London, to talk about foreign buyers is a bit strange. If you look at 38% of people that actually live in London are considered foreign nationals, to say that 70% of new homes are bought by foreigners is actually misleading, because if you look at how many of those are actually resident, then the actual foreign percentage goes down to 28%. So the distinction, I think, is not correct to be done. So it is foreigners, but as far as we're concerned, it's very much foreigners that live in London that want to be part of a development, and not just that you have a development with the lights off.
Linda, there's an important point to make on this, which is I think that if you look at the sort of product that Niccolo is producing and Northacre produces, they and the Candy brothers who produce the famous or infamous One Hyde Park development are producing a product that appeals to a very different sort of different part of the market who value property in a completely different way. They take a global perspective. They are looking at buying an asset that they would perceive in the same way as they might buy an expensive motor car or jewellery. And that is important to understand, and there are developers and builders and estate agents who have understood that and are presenting a product to that market in a way that makes sense to them. It's the periphery that I think we would all agree is perhaps where buyers need to be more cautious. Remember that for an awful lot of people around the world, an estate agent is a broker, but not in London, not in the UK. They are agents and they are selling on behalf of the seller. They have very little duty of care, and it's important that buyers, particularly those from a long way away, remember that doing their due diligence when they come to London is vital.
This is the key point, isn't it? That there are an awful lot of foreign buyers coming into London for whom making a capital loss is not necessarily a problem. Protecting a certain amount of their capital is the priority here. So an ordinary Londoner buying a house is going to be seriously in trouble if they lose 30% of their investment. But someone buying from abroad with the idea of buying into a safe haven somewhere with very secure property rights might feel absolutely fine about losing 30, 40, even 50% over a 10-year period, depending on currency moves, etc. So you've got these very, very different buyers, and that's a problem for the ordinary Londoner.
Niccolo, I want to ask you a little bit about what attracts buyers in London. Is it the schools? Is it the transport? Well, bear with me. Is it the nightlife? Is it the restaurants? You know, sort of what appeals about the capital that makes it such an attractive place where prices have been going up?
I think it's all of the above, really.
Including the transport?
Well, I don't think, as far as we're concerned, the people that are actually buying our developments, the transport is less of an issue in a certain way. But I think that they come here for everything that London has to offer, everything that you said. But one key point is also the schooling system as well. Yeah. So the schooling system is a very interesting driving factor for people to want to own a home here. And in fact, if what we track as well is, for example, foreign inquiries into the top schools in outside London, and those are continuing to rise. So the stay of these kids in these schools are longer, and there are more inquiries. So going back to your question, is there a bubble or not, we think that that's, for example, underpins London real estate. So they come for everything that is that. And then also they want to be part of the British fabric. And owning a home here is also an aspirational place to own one.
What about you, Henry? What are you finding in terms of your clients? Why would they buy in London?
Well, last year, Linda, interestingly, just over 60% of my clients were from South America, Brazil, Argentina. They've taken a very mature and reflective approach when looking at London as a centre for them to exchange their currency, and it makes a great deal of sense to them. Rather than the attractions, which I'm sure we'd all understand and agree on, about London as a place to come to buy property, whether it's to invest or live, the things that are threats for these people, the sort of things they're looking out for, are the things that perhaps in the UK we're not necessarily paying so much attention to. Our political system works very well, a stable political system works very well, but inbuilt into that, politicians in the UK are like windsocks. They will change what they're trying to do with a sentiment. So if there is a view that foreign nationals are not paying their share of tax, for example, we know that next spring, as I mentioned before, they are introducing capital gains tax for foreign nationals. There is talk, 2 of the 3 main political parties in the UK have undertaken to introduce a mansion tax. These are all things that will make those who buy property in the UK perhaps need to reflect a little further about what they're doing and the way they're going to do it.
Are your clients reflecting on that, Niccolo? I mean, who are your kind of buyers that you're getting inquiries from?
Well, I think that first of all, we have to look that the UK is one of the cheapest places in the world to actually own a property, first of all. So if you look at the taxes that you have in the US with on real estate, you see that it hasn't really deterred buyers in that. So I think that if you stick in creating the product that is the top-end product, I think people will come.
So what specifically about the product are you finding most appeals?
Well, I think that first of all, you've got to create a destination where people actually want to go and live. Right, so I think that people want all the amenities, people want the car park, they want the facilities, they want the concierge and so on. But they also want a place where they can actually display who they actually are. So I think that the times of developments that are clad everywhere and they're colored bright colors and so on, I think those days are gone. People want white walls, they want to display their art, because that's really what they're about. It's not really about the property, even if it's worth 30 million, because probably the painting on the wall is worth 50. So that goes again to look at, is it a bubble or not? Is it a bubble if your house is worth 30 and the painting is worth 50? Maybe not.
That was Henry Pryor, Merryn, Somerset, Webb, and Niccolo Barattieri.